perfect pairs. 2 units with an absurd amount of synergy. These units get much stronger when put together. The future of the meta of Honkai Star Rail will be the growing number of perfect pairs. It's very rare to find a combination of units that multiply in power as much as the perfect pairs do. In fact, these guys are so strong and so synergistic that they actually indirectly determine how strong the future DPS will be. All DPS that have yet to come out will have to live up to being competitive with the current perfect pairs. If you want the DPS on your account to stay relevant, you're probably gonna have to pull their perfect support. To better visualize what I'm talking about, I'm gonna show you a little chart I made of the ones I like to call the perfect pairs. Hello and welcome to the Belobog Everwinter City Museum. Here you'll see the amplifiers with their respective DPS, Jiaqiu and Akron, followed up by Fei Xiao and Robin, Ruanmei with Firefly, and then Shribi with the Herta, and then Sunday with Aglaia. These 5 pairs dictate the strongest teams in the game right now. Looking at the graph I made for one of my recent videos, we can see that the first perfect pair to show up was actually Firefly and Ruanmei, and the others followed soon after. So let's look at the synergies of these units in order of when they showed up. Let's start with Team Girlfriend Experience. When Ruanmei released in 1.6, she was great with literally every character. These were the top teams back in 2.0. DOT plus Ruanmei, Dr. Ratio and Pella plus Ruanmei, Jingyuan Sparkle plus Ruanmei, Dan Heng Sparkle plus Ruanmei. But little did we know, Ruanmei hadn't even come close to reaching her full potential yet. When Firefly released in patch 2.3, the landscape of the entire game shifted. The team building in the game was no longer about adding A with B to make C, it was now about multiplying A with B to make Z. Jingliu with Bronya, Jingyuan with Sparkle, Sila with Silverwolf. These are A plus B synergies. But unfortunately for them, Ruanmei plus Firefly was an A multiplied by B synergy. Rather than just giving her more turns or giving her generic crit and damage percent buffs, Ruanmei's weakness break efficiency and all type resistance pen directly enabled the super break archetype for Firefly. She even delays the enemy's action so Firefly can keep doing super break damage. She also gives you 20% break effect and 10% speed. Almost everything in Ruanmei's kit feels like it was developed with Firefly in mind. And I think that's the real secret behind the perfect pairs. The HSR developers probably intended for their kits to feel incomplete without the other. It's like eating a bowl of cereal without the milk, eating a pizza without the pepperoni. You can't have pizza without pepperoni. Unless you're a freak. Akron released back in patch 2.1 and was quickly named the strongest DPS. The funniest thing is, this was before Jiaqiu's release. Akron's archetype is completely unique, requiring her to have Nihility teammates and spamming debuffs on enemies to charge her ult. In most cases, Akron actually prefers running Nihility teammates over Harmony teammates, because Nihility units debuff enemies, whereas Harmony units tend to buff allies. And this was actually a problem for Akron, because Harmony units, they're fucking broken. Ruanmei, Robin, Harmony MC, Tingyun. Akron doesn't really synergize with them very well because these units don't really provide debuffs for her. The best options for her were Pella plus Silverwolf and Kafka plus Black Swan for the Karan team. Even though Akron was the strongest DPS at the time, she was still far from her full potential. And that is where patch 2.4 changed everything. Jiaqiu, Sexy Fox Chef, releases and synergizes with Akron in every single way, synergizing even more than Firefly and Ruanmei. Ruanmei has a 68% damage percent buff that is completely useless to Firefly because super break damage doesn't increase with damage percent buffs. This time around, it felt like Jiaqiu's kit was made only to synergize with Akron's kit. His basic plants a debuff, his scale plants a debuff, his ult plants a debuff, his ult makes it so when the enemies move, they plant a debuff on themselves, and then at max Ashen Roast stacks, the enemies take 35% increased damage, plus another 15% extra ultimate damage taken. I wonder who they made that for. Just to clarify, increased damage taken on enemies is completely different from increased damage percent on allies. One is an ally buff, and the other is an enemy debuff. In the HSR damage formula, it's a whole nother damage multiplier. Increased damage taken, also known as vulnerability, is actually very rare compared to all of these buffs. And Akron herself is a chronic self-buffer. From just her own traces and signature light cone, she gives herself a total of 306 increased damage percent. This perfect pair is arguably still the most synergistic duo to this day. Akron feels like she's missing half of her kit without Jiaqiu, but if she has Foxboy on her team, she's still able to clear all 3 endgame modes very comfortably. But as much as we're living in Akron's world, we're also living in someone else's world. Side note, are you guys tired of this song yet? I know a lot of Robin owners are like, yo, I mute the game audio just because of Robin's ult. But me personally, I kind of like the song. I still end up singing along when she starts going, let me show and hear my declaration. No more time. Honkai Star Rail is Robin's world, and the DPS are simply living in it. By now, we all know that Robin works with 90% of all DPS in this game, but her kit actually feels like it's specifically developed around Fei Xiao. Fei Xiao's niche is attacking a million times with follow-ups and then doing one big ult that also counts as a follow-up. Guess what? Robin adds extra ticks of damage for each of those million attacks and increases the crit damage of all follow-up attacks. Each time someone hits an enemy, Fei Xiao gets another stack for her ultimate. But Robin also gets energy, leading to more Robin ults, which leads to more ally actions, which leads to more Fei Xiao follow-ups, which leads to more Fei Xiao ults, which leads to more Robin ults, which leads to more Fei Xiao. This combo is just insane. Fei Xiao is really only as good as she is because of Robin. Robin might be the strongest support, but Fei Xiao is the best at using her. Alright, next up, one of the most doom-posted characters that we have ever seen, Aglaia. Aglaia was known to be very reliant on Sunday the moment she released. Her Supreme Stance activates when she uses her ult, and it's pretty much her entire kit. While Aglaia is in Super Saiyan, she gives herself a 90% speed buff and a 3000 attack buff. That's a lot of buffs, but there's always a catch, and in this case, the catch is that her ult runs out after 100 action value, and in that 100 action value, you have to get her ultimate back again, and Aglaia's ultimate costs 350 energy. That is the highest ultimate cost in the game by 110 energy. With such an insane energy requirement to stay in Sage mode, there are no characters in the game that can consistently give her 100% ultimate uptime, except Sunday. Sunday's ult gives 20% max energy, which will give Aglaia 70 energy back. And since Aglaia usually runs energy regen rope, that'll be a whole ass 84 energy back. Since Aglaia gives herself such an absurd amount of attack, she ends up getting a fucking lot. This, however, is not always a good thing. The huge attack buffs from Tingyun and Robin will lose a lot of value. That extra 1000 attack from Robin will actually start having diminishing returns. Sunday, on the other hand, only gives crit and damage percent buffs, the last few buffs that Aglaia is missing. Sunday is like a combination of the other action advancers, Sparkle and Bronya. Fuse the SP regeneration and buff duration of Sparkle, and then the 100% action advance of Bronya, and you get Sparkla. The Herta. Big Herta. Mommy Herta. Such an OP unit already. Insane AoE damage and a 100% action advance on her ult at E0. Dan Heng doesn't get that until E2. The only downside of Herta on her release was her lack of premium support. Nobody in the game could really perfectly funnel energy into her on release. You probably ended up running something like Herta, Serval, RMC, Herta, Jade with Lingsha, but none of these teams actually had a premium support to run with her. But obviously, as we know, this little fucker showed up. Whenever an ally hits enemies, the Herta gets energy based on how many enemies were hit. The problem with RMC and Robin is that they didn't exactly add many hits for Herta. But with Tribi, every single follow-up would be a full AoE 5 target attack, funneling more and more and more energy. Tribi also provides a very rare 24% res pen buff. So for Mommy Herta, similarly to Aglaia, she's a self-buffing monster. The last few things that she's really missing from her kit is defense ignore and res pen. Not to mention, Tribi's gimmick on her ult feels tailor-made for Herta. Overkilling the side mobs with Herta is actually pretty annoying, so Tribi takes all the damage you did to the 4 side mobs and throws 12% of that into the biggest guy. This pretty much allows Big Herta to be always good in pure fiction, because it's small guy, big guy, small guy, always. Tribi's gimmicks and mechanics were absolutely created with the Herta in mind. So I present to you the perfect pairs of Honkai Star. What?
I think you're actually missing a few. You didn't do all of them.
Okay, so here are some honorable mentions. These are synergies that are also insane and it could very well be labeled another perfect pair. So first, let's finish off Sunday. Wait, Sunday is so OP that he was able to bring back Qingyuan from the grave. Qingyuan's Lightning Lord to this day is still competitive in terms of damage output. The problem is that it's so goddamn slow. Lightning Lord, full name, lightning wielding, thunder clapping, spirit squashing lord. but he sits at a base speed of 60. Sunday can action advance Lightning Lord. This changes everything. This synergy alone made Jingyuan go from a mid-tier to a top tier. Next on the list, Rappa, a character that most people skipped. I feel like most people's reasoning for skipping Rappa was, I already have Firefly, so why do I need another Super Break DPS? Well, if you felt this way, you were kind of right. You couldn't even really run Super Break on both sides. You only have one Ranmei, right? So the other side would suffer. Welt. Let me introduce you to Fugyu? Fugwe? Fugue has amazing synergies with Rappa. As enemies get weakness broken, Rappa gets more and more charge stacks. And then when she does her last enhanced basic, she uses all of those stacks to do extra damage. With Fugue adding Exo Toughness bar to every enemy, Rappa starts to farm those stacks. A pretty damn strong synergy, but also pretty similar to Fugue's synergy with Boothill. Donald Trump's biggest struggle is getting stacks for his pocket trick shot. He gets a stack when he breaks an enemy and when he kills an enemy. And again, Fugue's Exo Toughness bar counts as another stack, giving him 3 pocket trick shot stacks in 1 basic. This lets Boothill ramp up his damage much faster than he usually would. The synergies of these pairs are pretty damn strong as well, and have a pretty good argument for also being called a perfect pair. Feel free to let me know in the comments which units you think are actually perfect pairs. And while you're down there, make sure you subscribe if you enjoy. The future of Honkai Star Rail is heading into the direction of synergies between a DPS and their supports. But that might not be the only thing that's happening. We might be in the early stages of introducing a third synergy as well, which might introduce us to the concept of perfect trios. We can kind of see this with Fei Xiao, Robin, and Adventurine right now. But as cool as that team is, I am not ready for that to happen. I can barely keep up with the perfect pairs right now. But even if the perfect trios show up and power creep everything, I will be there. Will you? Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day. I appreciate you.